Engagement to me, and I oversimplify things. It's sort of a bad habit, but you take something complex and try to oversimplify it. It's the things we hope people do because we've heard that when they do them, the probability of their heart transforming for the Lord goes way up. Yeah. Okay, we can't guarantee it. What we actually want, I love it because it's really deep Christians that give me a harder time on this than seekers do. But we don't care if you're in small group. We don't care if you're serving. What we do is we care that you do those because we know when you participate in those activities, then your heart starts to change.
Welcome to the Missional Marketing Podcast. My name is Bart Blair. I'm a digital outreach strategist and communications coach for the Missional Marketing team, and it's my privilege to welcome you to the show. We launched this podcast in the spring of 2020 with the hopes of being able to help churches grow by leveraging effective communications and digital marketing. My role on the team is as a digital strategy coach and a church communications coach, and have the privilege of co-hosting this podcast with Missional Marketing's CEO, Jason Hamrock, who shares the same passions that I do, helping you as a church leader grow as a communicator in communications, in outreach, in digital strategies. We want to help your church reach more people in the community where you live and where you serve. Today, we're going to share with you in Season 3, Episode 10, a conversation that Jason Hamrock, our CEO, recently had with the founder and the CEO of the Studio C. His name is Blue Van Dyke. Blue has an incredibly diverse history, background in the marketplace, as well as in ministry. He's combined a lot of things that he learned in the business marketplace with things that he's learned in ministry to create a tool and a strategy for churches to not just reach more people in the community, but to actually find ways to help more people stay in your church community. At Missional Marketing, one of the things that we consider ourselves to be pretty good at is helping your church reach more people in the community and seeing more people come through the front doors of your church. But as we all know, churches often have as wide a back door as they do front door. And what Blue and his team have done is come up with some strategies and some systems and an application that helps churches figure out where people are escaping, why they're leaving the back door, and trying to find ways to close those back doors that shouldn't be open, or to at least shrink the back door so fewer people are leaving, more people staying, more people having an opportunity to meet Jesus and be discipled in your church. I think you're going to find this conversation to be super interesting. It is a master class in engagement in your church. And I think Blue's one of the smartest people I've had a chance to meet. Unfortunately, I didn't get to be a part of this podcast because I was having internet issues on the day that Jason and Blue recorded it. But I think you're going to find it fascinating just as I did as I got to listen to it back. Anyway, Season 3, Episode 10. If you are finding this podcast to be helpful, please make sure that you leave us a rating or a review wherever you're consuming the content. If you're not subscribed yet, make sure that you do that on your favorite podcasting app or on our YouTube channel. And if you are listening or watching on our YouTube channel, make sure that in addition to subscribing, that you also ring the bell so that you're notified whenever we have future episodes drop. Well, that's it for the intro for this week's episode. Here's Jason Hamrock's interview with Blue Van Dyke.
Well, hey, Blue, welcome to the podcast. How you doing today?
I'm awesome. Thank you. Thanks for having me today. Love it.
Oh, glad to have you. I'm excited about this conversation because this is about church growth and engagement. And everybody who's listening to this podcast is typically church communications, executive pastor, lead pastors. They need to hear this conversation. Yeah. So before we get into those details, just kind of give everybody kind of a high level view of your background and where you come from and why you're passionate about engagement.
Sure. Love it. So prior to working at Studio C, which is where I'm at right now, I was executive pastor at Christ Church of the Valley, a church here in Phoenix. But I was a marketplace guy before that, right? I don't know if I say this as an apology or what it is, but I was an MBA, not a Bible college guy, right? So I went to business school and entered the market, but I love somehow those things have, that's only God being able to do that, have fused together. But came out of grad school, went to an international, MBA program, basically MBA taught in a foreign language where I studied German, did a good chunk of my undergrad at a German university and then grad school. But because of that, was recruited out of grad school by a company called Daimler-Benz, parent company of Mercedes-Benz. Yeah. And I love it because I came out thinking I was a hotshot guru marketing guy and and I love it because there's a way the market sure seems to humble you. And they're like, nice kid, but let's show you what this is all about. Yeah. So spent the first 6 years or so of my career at Mercedes-Benz. This is late 90s, early 2000s, where we were making a shift to some digital and some other areas. But I'll tell you, and you'll see this later as we talk about some engagement stuff. Here was the biggest takeaway I had at Mercedes during my time over there was they said, hey, I know you think marketing is all about advertising and bringing new people in. They said, but the key to our success is taking our existing customers and getting them to bring new people in. So it was all around customer engagement. And the truth is I stole that playbook and just ran it for my career after that. But anyways, they also introduced me to digital. So during the early days, I started on a project to help look at Mercedes-Benz.com. And what does this look like? We had hired digital agencies at the time. These were things like ad agencies, but focused on the internet. And so I jumped ship. I ended up joining that company. It's a company called Proxicom, and rode that wave for a little while also, sort of the digital agency. And if you remember these, you and I have had conversations about it. That was the .com era.
Yep.
All its good, bad, and ugly that goes along with it. So rode that wave up, down the other side. Was fortunate enough to come out, sort of still intact and alive during the .com bust. But here was the big takeaway, right? Fairly large shop, and our clients were folks like Toyota and Marriott and Chevron and et cetera. And here's basically what we'd say to them. You are spending billions of dollars to advertise to everybody, right? Let us use this wacky thing called the internet to help you understand who's in market, and we can target your messages better. You'll get better conversion, pay less. All around work better. That's basically the sales pitch we sold for 8 years straight. So ran that, came out the other side. I was fortunate enough to have an exit. So we sold the business. We were owned by a private equity firm. I was exhausted, to be quite honest. Right? I think I mentioned this to you, but on a personal note, right? I live here in the Valley. Had committed to my wife that we'd have dinner together as a family. My home office was LA. So for the better part of 8 years, I commuted back and forth to LA. And that's just taxing. So sold the business in 2007 and took a year off, which sounds insane, but I would recommend to everybody, right? So 3 goals when we took the year off: regroup with God, each other, and the kids. So I went on 4 or 5 mission trips. We went away and hung out together as a family for a summer, to get out of the sort of the routine. And then I coached high school baseball to regroup with the kids and do some of the things. And it was transformational. So came out of that, started a small venture capital company, right? Which is all tech-centric businesses. But here was the basic gist, the basic plan that I've stolen and run since then was find a company doing something really well and figure out how to scale it for a lot of people. Yeah. So you'll see that today too. There's a big piece of this, but ran that for another 7 years. And then this sounds indulgent, but took another year off. So my wife and I decided that year was so transformational that every 7 years we try to take a year off. And so long and short, for this year off, I actually went to my local church, which was CCV, and said something along the lines of like, hey, I don't know if there's a role for a business, guy who loves Jesus, but if you do, I'm here, I'm yours. And so they brought me on. I was very fortunate as executive pastor. Plan was to stay for a year. I ended up staying for 5. And really my job there for the 5 years would take all those things I learned, all the things I just mentioned from Mercedes or from digital agency or from venture capital, and just figure out the church application of those. So really focused on growth. How do we do member engagement and use technology and personalization and all this to help grow the church? And that's the play I ran at CCV for 5 years. Left, decided to go back into market, had actually invested in a small company up in Seattle, a digital advertising company. And then COVID hit and I started getting a bunch of phone calls from churches, and I loved them. They're like, hey, we heard you speak at that conference or on that podcast, or we came out to visit you and you kept talking about knowing where your members are and all these good things. And hey, we lost our stage. We have no clue where our members are. We don't know how to talk to them. We don't know what's happening. Can you help? And so literally after about the 15th phone call like that, I decided, you know what, let's see what we can do. And that's why we spun up Studio C to kind of help churches with that idea of engaging their members.
Okay. So we're here today. All right. So let's kind of zoom back out.
Yeah.
Before COVID, I think it's safe to say that the Big C church wasn't growing. It was shrinking, right?
Yeah,
I mean, not some churches were exploding, but a lot of them were not.
No doubt.
Okay, then COVID happened and it did something funky, and good, bad, or indifferent. It happened. Yeah. And so now we're in kind of this after the fact. And what do you think is happening now? What's the, why is the Big C church, why was it not growing? Let's get into some of that thing that you're passionate about when it comes to member engagement. The old model just isn't working. We got to have a new model. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, I think the model used to be this idea of, hey, members, just get people here to church and we'll convert them. Somehow with the weekend experience, there'll be something about this conversion. And then all of a sudden, when the weekend experience went away and the attractionalness of that experience went away, and then all of a sudden people started saying, well, what do I do? Right? How do I have to do if I can't do church here and I can't just bring people here and just show up, what happens? So then all of a sudden, a lot of people are not getting the message. They're not getting the word. The growth starts stagnant. So I think what it did is it highlighted this idea that gathering together is absolutely important, but it can't be the only thing. We've got to have this well-rounded idea of making disciples. To be honest, it's the fulfillment of the Great Commission, right? Yeah. Which is to make disciples and send them out, and that's how you're going to grow. And I just saw this tie into the same thing we've been doing, which is, hey, if we can resource the members of our church to go out and be the church, then all of a sudden it doesn't matter if a stage gets shut down, and you've multiplied your workforce, incredibly large. So that's what's happened. I think a lot of it is this idea of just come to church, stopped. People found something to do, but then a lot of people weren't necessarily equipped to continue on the work of the church without the stage or without the building when it was intact.
Yeah,
that's a big part of this.
Okay, so what you're saying is it's moving from just attendance, which was decreasing, to engagement. Right. Okay, talk to us. What does engagement mean?
Yeah, it's a good call. Engagement right now, it's probably the most played word out there right now, right? Every podcast we turn on has something to say about engagement.
Yeah.
So engagement to me, and I oversimplify things. It's a sort of a bad habit, but you take something complex and try to oversimplify it. It's the things we hope people do because we've heard that when they do them, the probability of their heart transforming for the Lord goes way up. Yeah. Okay, we can't guarantee it. What we actually want, I love it because it's really deep Christians that give me a harder time on this than seekers do. But we don't care if you're in small group. We don't care if you're serving. What we do is we care that you do those because we know when you participate in those activities, then your heart starts to change. Right? I tease a little bit flippantly and I say, man, if Walgreens would invent a heart transformation pill, I wouldn't have to do small group anymore. It'd be awesome. I could just go give people these little pills. But 2,000 years of history, and Jesus has shown us that if people can do these things, something happens where their heart starts to transform. So for me, engagement are those things in your church that if you could encourage your members to participate because you believe when they do, they'll start to open up and transform for Jesus. That's engagement.
Okay. So let's kind of talk a little bit about that, where you talked a little bit about Studio C. Talk a little bit about how do you use these digital tools?
Yeah.
That you can connect with people where they are in life, wherever they are, and then we can move the needle a little bit. So
sure. I'll tell you even part of where this came from and how Studio C ties in. Back in my venture capital days, it was great. I would have companies come up and they present what they're all about. And it's usually a PowerPoint that's this thick and it goes on forever and why they're worth $1 billion today and all this stuff. And I usually used to stop during that process and I'd say, hey, can you just draw on a piece of paper what the customer journey is? Like, help me understand what their path is. And then I can understand where you as a business bring value. So I did the same thing at church. When I joined the church, I just said, what is it we're supposed to do? And I created what I just call basically a member journey, which is modeled after a customer journey in the market.
Yeah.
Right. And so the idea for me as a church is our job as a church is to take people up here. I just like to call them not yet Christians, right? You can call them whatever you want. And we're supposed to help them go through some spiritual journey so they spit out the bottom, fully committed follower of Christ. Plug in your word, disciple, coach, leader, whatever you want. Okay. So all I said is, what is that journey? And then once we've mapped the journey, how good are we at it? Right? Can we even measure effectiveness? Can we help be intentional about it? So what I said was there's sort of three things, just like taking anybody else on a journey. I need to know where the people are.
Yeah.
I need to know where they're heading. And I need a way to tell them how to get there, directions. Kind of like a big old GPS system, right? If I'm going to tell you how to get to California from here in the Valley, from Phoenix, I got to know where you're starting. I got to know what your end destination is. And I need some way to tell you how to turn right, left, or where you need to go. So that's what we started with. And we just said as Studio C, let's help all of our church clients know where their members are in the life cycle, match them intelligently to what they need to do, their next step, where they need to go, and then create a way in which to tell them how to do it, how to take the right turn. So we're kind of we're sort of a spiritual GPS, and we use technology and services to do those two things, or those three things, really: know, match, and tell customers on how to kind of take a next step.
Yeah. So most churches would say, we really want our people to attend, to serve, to give, to be in a small group, to be baptized. I mean,
yeah.
And maybe there's a couple more. So what you're saying is if a church understood exactly where all their people were, in regards to those marks of ownership or membership or whatever you want to call it, engagement, then we could help our people that are not filling in those badges. They're not marking those off, so that we want to help drive them, because it's not that, hey, if you do all these things, now you're a fully devoted follower. It's just what you're saying is, hey, if you've done all these things, chances are that you're on the right path.
Yeah, exactly. And here's the hard part, which I love, is one, I think most churches would say we've got a good feel for what that journey looks like, right, in aggregate. The problem is it's not the same for everybody. So it's not linear, right? Not everybody enters in the same area. What might be great timing in life for small group, for me, for you, it might be serving. For somebody else, it might be giving of their resources. For others, learning to share their faith. But it's this idea that, first of all, it's not linear. And second, we're not all at the same place. So the hard part isn't knowing what the steps are. We call them next steps or badges or whatever you want to do to indicate, hey, this is something that I hope you do. It's not knowing what we want them to do. The Bible's pretty clear about what we want people to do. And the truth is most churches are doing very similar things. The problem is when you look at it at an individual level, right? Because Jason's at a different place in his journey than Blue is, and Bob is, and Susan is. And so our goal was to say, one, yes, let's map what the steps are. But more importantly, let's look at it on an individual basis. Let's try to understand where every unique person is in the journey. Let's understand what's uniquely the next step for them. And then let's talk to them in the most relevant way we possibly can. I mean, if I could, and I tell people this, if you knew everybody and you could go outside and have a cup of coffee and chat with them and do a hand-guided tour through that, do that. That's better, right? It's just figuring out how to do that at scale that gets really tough.
Yeah.
I want to take a moment to thank you for tuning in to the Missional Marketing Podcast. It's always our goal to help you as a church leader leverage your communications and digital media resources to reach more people for Jesus. One of the ways that we help churches do that is through creating social media content from your Sunday sermon videos. Specifically, what we can do for you is to create short sermon snippets from 30 seconds long to 5 minutes long, capturing those mic drop moments that you really want people to remember. We edit the videos, add captions, add your church branding, and then you or we post them to your social media channels. As a pastor, I always love to see my sermon content live on beyond the Sundays, and I know that's what you value for your sermons too. We offer this service as a monthly subscription, but we've got a 6-week trial that gives you a chance to see how it works. If you'd like more information, just shoot me an email at bblair@missionalmarketing.com. I'd be glad to meet with you, explain the process, and answer any questions that you have. Once again, thanks for tuning into our podcast. Let's get back to the interview.
Yeah, but you can't really do that and one-on-one unless you're a really small church.
Right.
So how are you doing that with most churches then? You're using their church management system to understand that data?
Yeah, totally. You need data, right? We need information. And it's so funny because I had to go out and I thought I could just start there like that was okay. I realized there's a lot of people that I actually have to start with saying, hey, using data, knowing your members is not a sin. Like, it's okay. Jesus actually knew things about people. And unfortunately, we don't have his same divine abilities to know everything, so we have to use data on it. So typically we use all kinds of first-party data. A lot of that comes out of the church management system, but churches have all kinds of information about people. Often they've done a spiritual gifts test or a personality test. They can look at what they're engaging in as far as when they're watching online and what they're watching. And we take all of that information and we just consolidate it. We aggregate it into one system so we can look at it. And then we can read in there and we can help churches understand where somebody is based on what they're doing. So yes, we use data first. And then we have some software that we built that helps you match and segment and kind of create audiences of people, right? Give me everybody who is 25 to 30 that's been baptized but isn't in small group yet. And now you can start bucketing and segmenting people. And then we've created a messaging platform to say, now that you know these people, what do you want to say to them? Yeah. Right? How do you want to encourage them to do that? And we deliver that message out in the best channel that we can to those members.
Okay. All right. So you're really painting a good picture here, because it's first of all understanding where your people are, and then again, like moving the needle to get them more Christ-like in their walk and discipleship. How does that kind of a focused member engagement actually grow the church?
Yeah, I love that you said that. And I think first of all, it's the greatest growth strategy, and it works both in the church and in the marketplace. So I'm going to give you a marketplace dynamic, which is unique. And I actually think this is funny. We talk about the church like stealing marketplace principles. I think it was the other way around a long time ago, right? So The great example at Mercedes is we had this down to a science. We knew that if we wanted to bring somebody into the brand, we would spend about $1,200 in advertising for every new person that bought a Mercedes. Right now, if you own one of the cars and I invest in you, we'd invest about $300 in what we call customer engagement activities to turn you into literally what we called at the time a brand evangelist. Right. So I wanted you to love the brand so much that you evangelize. And if we did a good job, on average, a brand evangelist bring 4 people into the product for us.
For $300.
Yep. For $300. Spend $1,200 to get one guy, spend $300 and he brings 4. It costs you 25% and it is a 4x ROI. I think that same principle, it's a great commission. Make disciples and send them out. Not trying to sound too businessy, but you're making an army of salespeople.
That's right.
So it's better. It helps with growth because you're going to get the volume of people. The second, so you get obviously more, we'll call people out there talking about this. But there's also been some studies lately that talk about seekers and where they want to understand about faith. And it's shifting from this idea of I'm going to go to a church professional to try to understand what's happening to I'd rather hear from somebody that I know and trust that lives out their faith. And so what you're doing is you're not only increasing the numbers, you're increasing what I'm going to call the conversion rate, the effectiveness, because I trust Jason. He's not in it for money. He's not in it for something else. What he is he believes it. I see his walk. I witness it. So they're more apt to talk to you and be inclined to listen from a layperson than they are even a professional at this stage.
Wow.
So I think you get volume and you get effectiveness. You get better conversion. And then here's the third part, which, we all try to do is you actually get a much higher retention rate. Right. If you've actually got people deep into your understanding of your product, and I pray for grace on that because salvation, I'm saying, is product. It's the greatest product in the world, but I'm purposely pushing a little bit.
Yeah.
But if you can get people into the product and understand it, then their stayability, right, their retention goes way up. So you'll see kingdom growth, and I get more people out there talking to people. I get a higher conversion rate, and I get a lower attrition rate. All 3 of those grow not only your church, but the kingdom. It's a trifecta for me.
Yeah. Okay. So this isn't just theory, people. Blue put this into practice. So Blue, talk to us about what you did at CCV. And I know it wasn't just you. Okay. Yeah. First of all glory to Jesus. He's the one who made this happen, but he used you to make this happen. So talk to us a little bit about what was that like at CCV?
Yeah. Well, a couple things. And I mean this from the bottom of my heart. Thank you for saying it first. I really do think there's 3 things that come into play with growth. One is Holy Spirit. None of us are that cool. If he doesn't want to, we're not growing.
That's right.
The second is you have to have a really good product, meaning somebody who can preach, good worship, good programming, and it's really hard to put lipstick on a pig. So you had great product. Yeah. But then the third thing is we had an aligned strategy. Okay. So this is the piece that I think, we talk about the technology we have and we talk about some of the services. All of that is in support of and subservient to a strategy.
Yeah.
Right. And it's a methodology. And one of the things I noticed when I came in from the marketplace is I think there's something I call them the core 4. Right. I think that the entire organization needs to really understand the vision, the mission, and the values for sure. Those are 3. And I think churches do a great job of that. But the 4th is the strategy, how we're going to do it. So when I started talking to churches, and particularly our church at CCV, I thought we had a really good grasp on the vision, the mission, the values, but nobody could articulate to me the strategy. This became our strategy, right? And it was sort of fitted on a single page. What's the strategy? Take a not yet Christian, walk them through a particular set of steps so that they spit out and they go out to their area of influence and they bring more people in. That's how we're going to grow people. Our vision at CCV was to win the Valley for Christ, right? How we're going to do it, the strategy is we're going to take our existing members, make them disciples, turn them into an army of salespeople, send them out and get them to bring the church for us. There's the strategy. Yeah. So now we could measure things, we could target things. So yes, what I believe was the effectiveness was really good vision, right? We had really good product. And then we were able to align not just our staff, but our lay leaders, our entire congregation, everybody that was involved in this was aligned along the same strategy.
Wow. So you had a lot of synergy because CCV's grown tremendously over the years.
Yeah.
But because the strategy kind of came into focus, it really saw some serious growth. I know that I live in the Valley as well. We're here in the Phoenix area, and CCV is one of the fastest growing churches, and it's multiplying disciples all over the place. So this thing has really worked.
Yep.
And that makes a lot of sense. I think most churches, that's a question. You probably know your vision. Well, you probably don't have it memorized, but you can find your vision statement, your mission statement, and your core values.
Yep.
Go ask your lead pastor, what's the strategy?
Yeah. Go ask anybody. Go ask your leader.
And ask other people and see if you get the same answer.
Yeah, right. I love that because I used to say, listen, if there is fog at the top, it's pure darkness, one layer below, right? So it's got to be crisp and clear. And I'll tell you, one of the things we did, which was very tactical, I loved, is even our new hire orientation. In the first hour, they would hear from our senior pastor, and he would go in and he would talk about the vision and the culture. Right. And then the very next hour, they'd hear from an executive pastor, and we talk about the strategy and the mission statement. Right. So that's the first thing they got in the first 2 hours of joining the staff was, the vision and the culture and the mission and the strategy. I think it's critical to get that alignment. We actually took this strategy and obviously presented it to staff, presented it to elders, presented it out to the group leaders as kind of key stakeholders. And then our senior pastor actually presented it to the congregation.
Yeah.
Right? No secret, folks. This is the strategy, right? This is important that you show up here. We have to, gather as a community of like-minded believers. But this coming in for an hour on Saturday or Sunday, whichever services you run, that is not the strategy for growth. Our strategy for growth is that you go out and bring people to Christ, not us.
Yeah.
Right. We're here to resource you.
Wow.
And I have this super cheesy word picture. It's a cheesy analogy, but rather than building a bigger 747 and just trying to get more and more people to come on the flight, what we said was our job is to resource people to be their own pilots. Right. So we want to be like a super tanker that's going to fuel them and charge them and resource them and send them out to fight a jet, fly their own planes.
And we're all going this way. Right. Yeah.
Again, I use these analogies. I'm kind of a bit of a World War II buff. And so when I was reading up about the success of Normandy, and I'm landing this on this alignment, it wasn't that it was the single best beach for the attack. In fact, there was a lot of options. And so, the Germans had to spread out their defenses to protect it. The key was they aligned everybody on the same beach. Yeah. Right. They had hundreds of thousands of men and ships and airplanes and everything else all targeting the same. And then the beauty of that is people can skipper their own boat, right? If they know what the goal is, they know what the objective is, they know what the destination is, then they can make decisions without having to ripple all the way back up. Yeah. So that's what it did for us. We armed our 400 plus staff to be able to go out and make disciples because that was our strategy.
Wow. Okay. We could talk for hours on this stuff. I love this stuff, Blue, and it's fantastic. Let's talk a little bit about Studio C and how you guys are helping churches. I know we talk strategy, but get down into the details a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So really from part of it, the first thing we do is make sure that everybody believes in this methodology. Yeah. I can't say this enough that what we do was built and is subservient to the methodology. So I always say, here's a couple litmus churches need to ask. Do you want to grow? And I hope the answer is yes, right, mm-hmm. for everybody in that, because if you grow, we grow the kingdom, mm-hmm. right? Do you want to grow? Do you believe in this idea of engaging your members as a pathway to growth, which I'm going to argue really is we put some cute PowerPoints and technology to the Great Commission. So do you believe in this idea of making disciples and sending them out as part of our growth engine? And then do you believe that to engage people, you need to know them? You need to do it in the most personalized way you possibly can. And if you can answer yes to all three of those, that's where Studio C kicks in. Right. So what we technically do when we come in is we'll help map what that discipleship journey looks like. You can call that almost a strategy component to say, what are the steps? If you could wave a magic wand, what are the things you'd love your members to do? And once you do that, then we start mapping over your data. We create a data warehouse for every church. Every church gets all their data from whatever source, church management system, gifts test, curriculum, content providers. We put all that together. And then we give you a system to start segmenting those audiences. Who do I want to talk to? Right? We're going to talk to people getting into groups, serving, giving, birthdays. And then we have a system that allows you to take this message you've made, right? An encouragement to get in and send that out to either your mobile app, right? To a website, to an email, to text message, whatever the right channel might be. And the beauty behind that is nobody has to dump their tech stack, right? Our goal is you don't have to start over. You don't have to get a new church management system. You don't have to get a new mobile provider. Our goal is to come in the middle, see what you're working with, and figure out how to take the data and help you present that out in the best light to your members.
Okay. All right. Wow. And then from there, yeah, I mean, then you're working the plan, right? A great strategy is a great strategy until it gets implemented, right? And then once it gets implemented, that's where you see growth.
Well, and what's great about it is you're also getting insight now to know what lever to pull, right? What I used to always say is, I'm not sure if we're like, I used to ask our staff all the time, are we doing a good job, right?
Yeah.
Do we know? And if so, how are we measuring it? And so we would set goals at the beginning of the year, really around even engagement. Yeah, we think we've fallen off on serving, or we've got some lower numbers that we are with regards to inviting people to church. So now we can lead into this. And I used to always challenge my staff with this idea of, if you knew, what would you do?
Yeah.
Right. So let me help you know, and then you can figure out how to minister to them better in a more targeted way. So it's about running the play and then measuring it, running the play and measuring effectiveness. And are we moving it? We found that you can be so effective. We actually overpulled on one lever and maybe didn't pull hard enough on another. Right. Our very, very first year, we were going to focus on baptism numbers.
Yeah.
I'm being so transparent, probably gonna get myself in trouble here, but I needed a couple quick wins. Our senior pastor at the time he's such an evangelist that, he jokingly would say, like, I just want to baptize people. After that, I really don't care. And I used to have to say to him that, hey, this strategy, this idea is going to help us baptize more people. So in the first year, I really needed to grow some baptism numbers, right? So we targeted messages really around people who'd been going to church for longer than a year. They were already involved in 2 or 3 different ministries, but weren't baptized by immersion yet. I targeted some of our former Catholics that hadn't, done a Christian baptism at that stage. And we just sent targeted messages to them, very specific to who they are and what they're going through, and grew baptisms by 40% our first year.
Wow.
Right. So that was this idea that now I got some wins. What we pulled pretty heavy on the lever called baptism. And then the next year we can adjust it a little bit. We can pull. So after running this play for 5+ years, we learned pretty well, at the beginning of a year is, where are we going to pull? What levers are we going to lean into a little bit? And then we just targeted those.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
So
this, I have so many more questions, but we're running out of time. How do people get a hold of you if they want to learn more about the Studio C and connect with Blue? How do they do that?
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. So we have a team. Obviously, you can reach out to anybody on the team, but if they want to contact me directly, way open for that. So it's just blue@thestudioc.org. So blue@thestudioc.org. You can email me. You can call me on my cell phone number. I post that out on our website as well. So my cell phone's on there if they want to contact me. Otherwise, our website really is the best way to get information about what I'm talking about. And then there's a nice little form on there to reach out and connect with us. So that's thestudioc.org.
Yeah.
Easiest way to get in. But lots of team members. One of the things that I was really, really fortunate about is there's this unique group of people who have these skill sets they learned in the marketplace, but they want to deploy them in the service of the kingdom, right? And I jokingly would say that, let's be honest, when I joined the church, I barely stepped over the fence from market to ministry. I wasn't up on the stage producing sermons and writing. Well, I barely stepped back over. We only serve churches right now, but I've got a group of people that have experience from agency life. They worked in the marketplace in agencies. They've come from that. Somebody who has been doing marketing and communications for some mega churches for the last 15 years, runs our services team. So we've got a robust, and depending on what you need, you'll either meet with me or we'll connect you with one of them, and would love to have a conversation.
Yeah. Well, I'll land it with this. A lot of you know what we do at Missional Marketing. We are sort of the top of the funnel, so to speak. We love to drive traffic to your website to get engagement. We want to create leads. We want to create more momentum for the church. But this tool is an amazing tool because it really, that's the next layer of getting more engagement from your people. And so I'm constantly sharing with churches the Studio C method and Blue's passion behind all that. And it's worth checking it out. You want to take a minute, you want to go investigate it, go Google it, and then connect with Blue. I'll tell you, it'll produce good fruit for your church.
Well, thank you, Jason. I don't mean to pile on too much on this, but that's what I love about working with you too. It's the synergy of the entire life cycle.
Yeah.
I'm focused on engagement because it's my passion. I believe in it, but it doesn't work in isolation. You actually still need to talk to people, right? That's what I'm saying, especially based on when you're, the lifestyle of the church. If you're very young, you probably need to invest a little bit heavier, even what I'll call upper funnel initiatives versus engagement. But it's the synergy between those two and the handoff and the knowing. The end of the day, we're trying to help somebody go from anonymous, I don't know you and you don't know me, to known and build a rapport and serve them in the most targeted way we possibly can. So what you guys are doing is awesome. We share a like philosophy, I think, in that, and I really appreciate all that you've been doing and working with you. You guys are terrific at it.
Thanks, Blue. Take care.
Good. All right. Appreciate you.